This is Land of Havilah, Isaiah 24. As God will lay waste to Tyre in the last chapter, He'll lay waste to the entire earth in this chapter. Could this be a prophecy of the Great Tribulation? We'll read the 14-verse description of it, then comment. Verse 1. Behold, Yahweh makes the earth empty, makes it waste, turns it upside down, and scatters its inhabitants. It will be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the creditor, so with the debtor, as with the taker of interest, so with the giver of interest. The earth will be utterly emptied and utterly laid waste, for Yahweh has spoken this word. The earth mourns and fades away. The world languishes and fades away. The lofty people of the earth languish. The earth also is polluted under its inhabitants because they've transgressed the laws, violated the statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore the curse has devoured the earth, and those who dwell therein are found guilty. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The new wine mourns, the vine languishes, all the merry-hearted sigh, the mirth of tambourines ceases, the sound of those who rejoice ends, the joy of the harp ceases. They will not drink wine with a song. Strong drink will be bitter to those who drink it. The confused city is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. There is a crying in the streets because of the wine. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. The city is left in desolation, and the gate is struck with destruction. For it will be so within the earth among the peoples as the shaking of an olive tree, as the gleanings when the vintage is done. These shall lift up their voice. They will shout for the majesty of Yahweh. They cry aloud from the sea. Comment in verse 1, Yahweh makes the earth empty, makes it waste, turns it upside down, and scatters its inhabitants. In verse 2, it'll affect every stratum of society, small and great. In verse 3, just in case you missed it the first time, the earth will be utterly empty and laid waste. Yahweh has spoken this word, which means He won't take it back. In verse 6, few men are left, so it's not 100% emptying. A few will survive. What could this be except the worldwide Great Tribulation described by Jesus in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, and by John in Revelation chapters 6 through 18? So what does Revelation say about emptying the earth until there are only a few left? Worldwide depopulation, in other words. In Revelation 6, 4 horsemen are loosed on the earth for war, death, and famine. There are catastrophes, including a great earthquake, darkening of the sun, falling of the stars, the removal of the sky like a scroll when it's rolled up, every mountain and island moved out of its place, everyone hiding in caves and rocks, begging for death all over the earth, because everyone knows that this is the wrath of God. Revelation 7:14 calls it the Great Tribulation, same as what Jesus called it in Matthew 24:21. In Revelation chapter 8, there's hail and fire mixed with blood thrown down to the earth. 1/3 of the earth is burned up. Something like a great burning mountain was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea creatures died, and 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. A great star fell from the sky onto the rivers, and many died because the water was made bitter. And despite the catastrophes of the sun, stars, and removal of the sky in chapter 6, in chapter 8 there's more about the sky. 1/3 of the sun, moon, and stars are darkened. Then woe to those who dwell on the earth, because more is coming. In chapter 9, at least one of the stars fallen to the earth was actually an angel, so that points to the previous comments about the sun, moon, and stars, that at least some of it was speaking of the unseen world of angels and demons. In chapter 9, 1/3 of mankind dies, but none of the remaining of mankind repented. In chapter 15, there are more plagues. In chapter 16, more wrath. Every living thing in the sea dies. Jesus said unless those days were shortened, no flesh would have been saved, Matthew 24:22. So all that aligns with what Isaiah said about the earth being empty and laid waste with few men left. In verse 5, the earth is polluted because the inhabitants have transgressed laws, statutes, and broken the everlasting covenant. This also aligns with the Great Tribulation, that the world will be awash with sin, idolatry, and a refusal to repent, Revelation 9:20 and 21, and 16:9 and 11. In verse 6, the inhabitants of the earth are burned, also translated consumed, which makes more sense. The population is being decimated not necessarily by burning, but by whatever. In verses 7 to 11, there'll be a stop to all merrymaking and visiting. There's too much distress in the earth. Any attempt to have a good time would be useless. In verse 12, desolation and destruction. In verse 13, those who remain on the earth will be something like those few olives left on the tree after harvest, or those few grapes left unharvested. When it's all over, in verse 14, those remaining on the earth shall lift up their voice and shout for the majesty of Yahweh. They'll marvel at how powerfully God made a sweep of the earth and spared them. It reminds us of Noah finally exiting the ark after the flood and how his family survived thanks to God. Because of this great purging of evil, here's what the survivors should do and will do. Verse 15. Therefore glorify Yahweh in the east, even the name of Yahweh, the God of Israel, in the islands of the sea. From the uttermost part of the earth have we heard songs. Glory to the righteous. Comment in verse 16, glory to the righteous. It's a glory to still be alive on the earth. The remaining on the earth have burst out in song. Assuming the depopulation of the earth and distress on it is the Great Tribulation, we'd expect the next thing to be the millennial reign of Christ. Thus, glory to the righteous in verse 16, and the songs in the earth. They've survived the tribulation and entered the millennium. But how about now in this age, Isaiah says, still in verse 16? But I said, I pine away, woe is me. The treacherous have dealt treacherously. Yes, the treacherous have dealt very treacherously. Comment, Isaiah sees evil around him on a daily basis, and it torments his righteous soul. He doesn't know how much more he can take. He says he pines away. Coming up, Isaiah tells the treacherous what to expect, no matter whether it's the treacherous of his day or the treacherous in the day of the tribulation. Verse 17. Fear, the pit, and the snare are on you who inhabit the earth. It will happen that he who flees from the noise of the fear will fall into the pit, and he who comes up out of the middle of the pit will be taken in the snare. For the windows on high are opened, and the foundations of the earth tremble. Comment in verse 18, God will open the windows on high, not to pour out blessing, but to pour out wrath on the wicked. They will not escape. Jesus said, unless you repent, you will all likewise perish, Luke 13:5. Now speaking again of the Great Tribulation, verse 19, the earth is utterly broken, the earth is torn apart, the earth is shaken violently. The earth will stagger like a drunken man and will sway back and forth like a hammock. Its disobedience will be heavy on it, and it will fall and not rise again. It shall happen in that day that Yahweh will punish the army of the high ones on high, and the kings of the earth on the earth. Comment in verse 21, the army of the high ones on high is probably demons, same as what's described in Ephesians 6:12, as the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Yahweh will punish that army in verse 21. In Matthew 8:29, the demons ask Jesus, have you come to torment us before the time? That's a window of insight for us that there's an appointed time for the punishment of the demons. Jesus said, eternal fire has been prepared for the devil and his angels, Matthew 25:41. Verse 22, they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. Comment in verse 22, after many days they shall be visited. In Revelation 20, verse 3, Satan will be shut up in the abyss at the start of the millennium, and at the end of it will be released for a short time. All that runs parallel with verse 22 we just read, quote, they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in prison, and after many days they shall be visited, end quote. The visitation is the release for a short time. During the millennium, while they're in the pit, and Jesus reigns from Zion, verse 23, then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, for Yahweh of armies will reign on Mount Zion, and in Jerusalem, and before his elders will be glory. Comment, that's the chapter. In verse 23, the moon being confounded and the sun ashamed are poetic ways of saying that the Lord will be so bright on Mount Zion that the sun and moon will be dull by comparison. That's the definition of the millennium, that the Lord will reign on the earth from Zion. In review, the chapter depicts the Great Tribulation, a few surviving, then the demons being shut up in the abyss, the Lord ruling on the earth, and after many days the demons being released, all agreeing with the timeline of Revelation. Then, by the way, in Revelation, but not here, the timeline goes on that there will be a final defeat of evil, destruction of the present heavens and earth, creation of a new heavens and earth, and eternity in that new creation with the Lord. Backing up and looking at the general scheme, there's the present age, followed by the tribulation, then the millennium, then eternity. There will be no sun or moon in the new creation, Revelation 21:23, which is another clue that since the sun and moon are present in verse 23 and the Lord reigns on Zion, this couldn't be anything other than the millennium. So the chapter is the tribulation and the millennium, but there's no mention of the subsequent destruction of creation, the new creation, and eternity. Isaiah 25 is next.